Hello and happy Thursday. It's Thursday, right? I'm trying my best to keep track of days. Okay, today's study skill is one of my favorites to use in class, but probably one of the ones that you would be missing out on if you're not in class. And it is called elaboration. The idea of elaboration is to take a concept and expand upon it, do something fun and different and crazy with it, or to just go beyond where it goes. So, one of the key things about how your brain works is that your brain does not like to learn new things if it cannot connect them to other things that you already know. So things work when they build on each other. So the idea of elaboration takes a new concept and forces you to back relate it to other things that are related to what you do. So I do that a lot. It helps that I teach about the human body, so I can elaborate on all kinds of different things. So when I teach about stuff, I can relate it to how we're feeling, thinking, or functioning. Sometimes it's harder to do that in other subjects. Math is probably one of the more difficult ones where you want to try to back relate to how it connects to other things and see how you're putting it together and finding new ways. But that's actually probably the one where it is the most important. So trying to relate an algebra equation to something a little bit more complicated, or trying to relate fractions to something real like cooking, can be really important. So I strongly recommend, if you're hitting topics that are new and different, that you kind of make a list of them and then think about sort of new and different and interesting ways you can expand upon them. Sometimes one of the best ways to elaborate on something is to make a mind map. So where you put the concept in the center and you list a whole bunch of things that kind of vaguely relate to it around it in sort of a diagram or an image. And that way, maybe you'll remember those things a little bit better later and help you back relate to the initial concept. So that's kind of what I would say. So if you're learning something new and you're not sure about it, mind map it, put it in the middle, and say, well, what do I know that relates to this? How does that thing relate to something else that I know? How does this thing relate to another thing that I know? And also try to keep these things vaguely in your mind throughout the day and the week, because then you're also adding in recalling them and spaced repetition, because you'll look at something the next day and try to remember how it back related to what you learned the day before. So looking at a new thing in your kitchen and relating it to math, or looking at some new ideas that are happening today and back relating them to history, reading something different and saying, I wonder how this compares and contrasts to the thing I read for English the other day. I'm pretty sure psychology comes up with every single solitary person you talk to ever. So there's so many different ways to elaborate on something. And so that's my cute study tip for today. Do the elaboration. I'll link my favorite learning scientists' elaboration stuff. All right, so that was my study tip. My COVID science for the day is going to be about antibodies. So, first of all, if you have not watched any of my other videos on the immune system because you're not part of my class, quick deal with antibodies. Antibodies are the little things your body makes that go after the bad guys that enter your body. So if a virus comes into your body will eventually, it takes a little while the first time, recognize it, and then start producing antibodies to go after it. They start fairly non-specific, and then they get more specific as you go. And then the antibodies remain in your system after the virus is destroyed, which is what makes them kind of special and unique. Because even though there's no more virus, there are antibodies. So why is this important right now? The main reason is that, well, there's two main reasons. So I'll break this down. Main reason one, we can find out if there are antibodies in people's blood after they would have recovered from the virus. So virus testing is still fairly difficult in some cases, or can't be done, or there aren't tests. Or if you think you had it but recovered, there would be no virus testing. Antibody testing would tell you if you did. And then thing two is that that's what confers the immunity, or the less chance of getting it in the future part. So we're seeing now an increase in people using antibodies for testing. Things we don't know. We don't know exactly what the antibodies will look like. So antibodies go after different parts of viruses. So sometimes it's a little hard to gauge. So getting the right antibody tests can be a key thing. So getting the right ones will be important. We do not yet know how long antibodies will last, because obviously this is brand new. So as of right now, the longest anybody's antibodies have lasted, assuming the very first person might have gotten it in China in November, December, January, February, March, April, would be like 5 months, 6 months. So we won't know the long-term answer to that. But there is a neat thing about the way antibodies work that I can note that actually back relates to some things you might know. So elaborate on antibodies, which is that when people get them, in some cases, they work really well for a long time, but in some cases they decrease over time. But you know what actually brings them back? Low-level exposures as well. So if people have some antibodies and a virus is still sort of circulating, so it causes some people trouble but not others, it can also enhance the antibodies in other people. This is what actually happens with the chickenpox. So people would get the chickenpox and then they'd have some immunity to the chickenpox because the virus hides out in the body, but the body keeps it at bay with immunity. And then you'd be around kids who had chickenpox, and that would boost your immunity. Kids no longer have chickenpox because they have a vaccine for it, and so they're getting, so the adults are getting shingles because their immunity is not reboosted. So there's probably some of that happens with flu, although the flu mutates very fast, so you need new antibodies all the time. But if you have antibodies that confer a little bit of resistance, people might get lower versions of it and boost other people's antibodies in the process. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that can go on with that. And as we start to produce immunity through the population, which is eventually going to mean more of the population gets out and starts seeing the virus, and possibly asymptomatically, as I noted yesterday, it'll start to build immunity. This is going to be a slow, long, possibly real annoying process and possibly difficult to track, but antibody tests are quicker and easier to do than viral tests, and they're a little bit more on the nose. So if we can start figuring out how to do some widespread antibody testing, we can at least get enough information to put people in high risk and low risk categories, move things into circulation and do that. Months away, don't get excited. And I mean, that's the very beginnings, but antibodies will be good. They will be useful, and testing for them is going to become more and more prevalent. So that is your useful information about COVID stuff for today. I was reading an article, a couple of opinion pieces actually in the New York Times that were talking about the possibilities of antibodies. And they're good opinion pieces. They're written by scientists, which means that none of them are, this is how it is, period, end of story. Scientists are always, hey, this is what we know, and this could change, and this could improve. That is an inherent part of science, is that things are going to constantly be slightly changing and slightly improving. But this is at least the direction we can go, and there are really good people working on it. I will also link the New York Times opinion pieces in there. I don't have a scientific article for today because that's what I was looking at, but they do backlink to some good stuff. So at least you can take a look if you haven't run out of your New York Times stuff yet, or you can contact me if you want more information, because you can't get into that because I do have a subscription. I can get you more. Okay. That's it. Have a good day. Oh, I'll be on late tomorrow because I have a thing from 10 to 11, so I won't be on until 11 o'clock tomorrow.